Hey, it's your old pal Slim, and this is 70 Millimeter. Finally, a podcast about movies. Each week, I'm joined by famous artist Danny Haas.
Do you believe in the paranormal?
And writer, poet, Protolexis.
And, you're going to spend all this time, your last year, your last moments watching Bond movies. It's hard to fathom.
And together, this episode, we discuss Céline Sciamma's Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Enjoy! Proto's comments on one character in particular, Darth Vader, in Rogue One, gobsmacking people.
I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. Like, if you're going to listen to this show, you're going to get the truth from me. I'm going to give it to you straight. All right? This is how I feel. I want to communicate my emotions. I don't want to sugarcoat it. I don't want to pretend that, Darth Vader is the best designed character in Star Wars when he's not. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give the people what they want, the truth.
You can't be mad at that, You almost feel sorry for him, Matt. The magic's gone. He's grown up, no longer a child.
This is a big episode. We're focusing on Portrait of a Lady on Fire, the love story sweeping the nation as it hits wide release. We've seen it already. That's happening just around the corner. I do want to talk briefly. I saw the new Invisible Man movie.
Oh, how was it?
With Elizabeth Moss. I thought it was good. It's never it didn't feel like a big horror movie. Everyone's like, oh, horror movie of the year. Horror.
Interesting.
It's not really horror. It's almost like a psychological thriller more than anything.
Where can you draw the line?
That's a very good question. I also watched Never Say Never Again. Still on the Bond train, so I'm just about almost done the Roger Moore era.
Wow. I fired up on Her Majesty's again. I had to start it over because I forgot where I was at in this movie. I turned it off after 10 minutes. I'm never going to get through this.
Bond has been pushed back to November because of the pandemic, so we have plenty of time. Proto, you want to join us on this rewatch of the Bond
we can start over for
movies?
I'm trying to wrap my head around why you guys would even do this to yourselves. Like, movies are supposed to be fun. Like, you're supposed to be enjoying what you watch. But you guys are treating it like a chore. Like, I can see it on your faces right now. I'm looking in your eyes, and neither of you want to do this, but you're doing it anyway to see what, so that you can say you saw them all when you see the No Time to Die that comes out in thanks. We might be dead by then. And, you're going to spend all this time, your last year, your last moments watching Bond movies. It's hard to fathom.
Yeah, I'm starting to side with him on this one, Matt.
Can I just briefly defend myself, or at least attempt to? You can have a fun experience in a 1.5 star film, which unfortunately are most of the Bond movies. You can have fun seeing elderly James Bond still canoodling with these 20-year-old women. Galore. I might not have to even edit that out.
Just bleep it.
That's also probably bleeped.
I'm seeing a pattern.
Maybe it changes, We're talking about the female gaze in Portrait of a Lady on Fire. We're at the opposite end of the spectrum with, 30 James Bond movies where he beds all these women for no apparent reason. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is our film this week in just a moment. Next week, if we want to get into next week real quick, it's a big one. Maybe the biggest one we've done so far. Out of nowhere, we're going to be doing All or Nothing. And that is Mike Leigh, film 2002, starring your favorite rat man from Harry Potter, Peter Pettigrew, in one of the lead roles. And you're probably wondering, what on earth made you choose this movie? If you're probably searching on Letterboxd, what is this movie? We reached out to a dear friend of ours by the name of Chuck Forsman, creator of the famous graphic novels, End of the Epic World, I'm Not Okay With This, etc. He's a hotshot, but he's first and foremost a friend of ours. We asked him if he wanted to come on and do a movie, and that was his choice. All or Nothing. Honestly, we'd never heard of it.
Never.
Right? You guys haven't heard of it.
No.
Chuck is highbrow.
Actually, I think he gave Rogue One 1 star on Letterboxd. Not to belabor the Rogue One topic.
It's fine.
For any longer, but so that's his choice. He'll be joining us next week. Big episode. Also, speaking of Letterboxd, this week's winner, we do a contest every week. You share the show on social media. You get entered to win a Letterboxd Pro account for a full year. It's our favorite social media site. This week's winner for a year of Pro on Letterboxd, Sean from Colorado.
Oh, Sean.
Do you believe?
Yes.
Wow.
Unreal. Sean, you might recognize the name. He leaves voicemails every so often. So thank you, Sean. You just won a free year of Letterboxd Pro. We haven't seen the Danny art, the official Danny art for this episode yet. He's probably too busy, replying to all his tweets from that Star Wars retweet that he got today. Now, you were briefly toying with the idea of doing multiple pieces.
Yeah.
Is that still happening? No pressure. One is enough, honestly.
I don't feel the pressure, and it could happen. I have 4 kind of laid out right now. 1 started. So we'll see. We'll see. It's one of those movies that does it to you. Inspired.
Portrait of a Lady art book by Danny Haas confirmed.
Oh my gosh. Neon Films, are you
Can I
listening?
get Neon? Call him.
Neon? Did you guys watch any movies this week?
I was going to watch, there's this new Netflix movie, Timmy Failure, or something like that, with my kids, but they refused to watch anything with me this week. We couldn't win.
Isn't that a Disney Plus movie or show?
Oh, yeah, maybe it's Disney Plus. Yeah, I think you're right.
After the Willy Wonka debacle, they've probably sworn off of watching anything with you.
I fired up the original Murder on the Orient Express.
Oh, yeah.
And it was magical. It was very good. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. Maybe 4. Maybe 3.5 on Letterboxd. I can't remember. I forget the gentleman's name that plays the detective, but he's absolutely amazing in this film.
Hercule Poirot. Was that the detective's name? My mom used to love his, I think he had a TV show, Poirot. My mom used to watch that show all the time. That's the only reason I know that name.
Interesting. This was a fun movie. I'm now going to watch the new one, hopefully, sometime soon. But it was a great movie. Connery's in it with a beautiful mustache.
Isn't Rey Skywalker in the new one?
Yes, and she is. Thank you for using her.
She has a name.
Before we get into Portrait, we actually have if you want to support the show, we're joking around about a Patreon, but we do have a TeePublic store up. Danny's designs are available on a glorious t-shirt. I have one of those shirts. So there's a link in our episode notes if you wanted to get a 70mm t-shirt. There's actually a secondary 70mm logo that has never been revealed publicly that Danny worked on. That is amazing. So be sure to check that out. There's a link below in your podcast app. You could also find it on 70mmpod.com. But man, that 70mm secondary logo, chef kiss.
Thank you.
I have that in a digital cart. You better believe it.
Let's get into it. Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Proto and I saw it together at the Ritz for the first time. Danny saw it with his wife. Proto, can you please guide us?
Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a birth, life, and burial of love. The painter Marianne travels to a secluded coastal home with the task of creating the portrait of a would-be bride. Eloise, the subject, is to be wed to a man of Milan, but only after he approves of her figure, seen through the portrait and eyes of Marianne. This is the second attempt at painting the portrait, the first painter failing because Eloise refuses to pose. Marianne is instructed to create the portrait in secret, posing as a companion to Eloise. With care, day by day, Marianne recreates Eloise on the canvas, turning the outline into color, and color into light, and light into Eloise. But as the portrait takes shape, so does something else. First the outline, then the shape, and then, with something akin to magic, we see what was there from the beginning, waiting to be created.
poet. If I can just merely interject as one of the only thing I knew about this movie ahead of time was there was internet buzz, among the film bufferes,
Yes.
I'm not sure if we would consider ourselves film buffs. We're film lovers, but we're aware of what's happening in the bufferita zone of film fans. And this film was number one, like on Letterboxd, top rated, narrative film list. And I was like, WTF is this movie? I've never heard of it. How do I see it? And it took us a while to track it down because we're going to do it sooner, but then we realized that maybe like no one could see it in theaters. So it finally came to our Sciamma, and Proto and I went there, sat down. I didn't know what the heck to expect in this movie. I don't even know where to start.
Well, one thing I said to you when we were going in was, sometimes you go to see a movie and you're like really excited for it. But then when you sit down, you kind of realize that you're seeing the thing that you were planning on, but you're not totally prepared for it because you don't know what really to expect. That's how I felt with this. Like I've been excited for it. There's a lot of hype around it. Saw just the poster everywhere, people raving about it. It's a French subtitled movie. So it's really not in my wheelhouse at all. When I first came out of it, when it was finished, I wasn't really sure how to feel about it. It's definitely a movie I feel like you have to digest. And I think maybe in the simplest way, it's a movie that's more like poetry than like just a basic story. Like if movies are like mostly like novels, this movie felt more like a poem that had a lot of layers and interconnecting ideas that were presented in a really pleasing and beautiful way. It was really like focused on these two characters very closely to a point where there's so much communicated through this movie strictly through their facial expressions. If anything, their performances by just like the gestures of their faces, or to me, are like the standout of this movie. The actress who plays Eloise, her face is like mesmerizing. Who the portrait is about, because, and they talk about it in the movie how there's this this inability that she has almost to smile, and it's something that is revealed slowly over the course of the movie. But it's almost also like when you look at her, there's a lot of moments where she seems to be almost frowning, but then you might think she's smiling at the same time. And I don't know if that was directed to her to do that, or if that was just like naturally the way she looked and that's why she's in this role. But fitting in with the story, it was just amazing just to see how they related to each other and how much was communicated strictly through how they looked at one another.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think there's a lot about this movie that feels like poetry. This film takes its time and it meditates almost every scene on what the character is saying. They're very quiet. There's often like long pauses and between their reactions, and it creates this like tense like feeling of being alone, and like because we only see like a few people on this small island and they take the long walks, and there's like no one for miles. And for me, this movie is like a work of art. Every shot is, for lack of a better term, a portrait. Each scene is so full of color that it almost pains me on how good it is. And I had read that they had shot this in 8K just to retain as much color possible, and it really shows. I mean, you have a movie about a painter, and basically every frame is painted in this color. I mean, this is one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. I was constantly taken with every scene. There's like this, on top of the color, there's this devastating, deeply romantic sense to this film. And you have like this painter studying her subject, and then we watch the painter be studied by her subject, and it's this wild like turn in the middle of this movie. But it takes real time to develop these characters, and I feel like every conversation is this mental mind game. The way they speak to each other, And then they start having these feelings with each other, and I love this movie so much.
Yeah, to echo Pro's comment, I don't even know if I watched the trailer before we decided to watch this movie, to be honest. I think I went in like cold, just totally, because I knew, and I think I've said this like for a long time, this is definitely a film and not a movie. Like this is one of those artsy, I don't know, for people that maybe were wondering if they were going to be into this movie. It's definitely one of those art house films, in my opinion. It's not like, this isn't The Abyss. Once I sat down, man, there's no music in this movie outside of some really perfectly chosen moments to play music. And there's the only sounds you hear are, like when we were in that theater the first time, you can hear almost every breath that these characters take. And every noise is so well chosen. The sounds of the beach, the painting, the sketching, the walking in the house, the fireplace crackling, the cutting of bread. Every noise is so well put in this film. I mean, literally the breathing, I couldn't get past about how important it was to hear the heavy breathing of these characters in very tense emotional moments. Just the stillness of this film was really like, it just left me awestruck. And it is very plotting. And when we got out of the movie, I think Proto and I were even both saying like, I don't know how to feel about this movie, because overall, like there are some of the most beautifully written scenes that I can recall over the last few years between these two characters. But there's also the slow burn that builds those scenes where it's just two characters looking at each other for maybe like 5 minutes straight and having an interplay between the two of them. It's just, the whole movie is just, a string of moments and conversations over the course of a few days in, 3 settings, maybe 3 locations. And I don't usually like sit to watch those kinds of movies. I was just so struck by that. I didn't know how to feel about the movie the first time I saw it. I was like, did I love this movie? Like, what did I think of the movie, the scenes where, nothing really happened at first glance, but really it's the interplay between the two characters and their dance between each other to open up. And that really settled with me on the second viewing. There's so many layers in this movie, like the tale of, was it Orpheus and Eurydice, which I feel like I should leave to Proto to explain, but that becomes this kind of like exquisitely layered story where this tale of this husband who lost his wife at a young age goes down to hell, Hades, and asks for her to come back. Like, please, I need her back to live her full life with me. And he tells this impassioned. They're reading this book together. The three characters. There's Marianne, Eloise, and Sophie, who works at the house. They're having fun together. They're reading this book almost like they're watching, a popular show on Netflix together. It's really hilarious. It's obviously the 18th century. So she's like reciting this story with the three of them at the table. And the husband's like, gives this impassioned plea and he agrees. He's like, okay, your wife can come back. She's going to come back from hell under one condition. You don't turn around to see her come out. Like, you need to, if you turn around and look for her, then the deal's off. She's staying in hell forever. So obviously this is me, a dullard. I've never heard of this story. This is just this popular story through the course of time. And so the wife is coming through. She finally is like at the exit of hell, and the husband turns. Like, he couldn't resist. He turns before she makes it out. He sees her, and she is then doomed forever to stay in hell. And the interplay between the three characters, they're talking about this story. Like, Sophie is like, I can't believe that he would do that. He knew he couldn't turn around. He would ruin it forever. But Marianne and Eloise see it from a different light, and they explain how, he knew what he was doing. He, instead of the lover's path, he chose the poet's path. That was the poet's decision. He wanted to see her one last time. And then Eloise is, maybe it was the wife's decision. Maybe she asked him to turn around, and maybe she wanted her memory to live on in him, and instead of living that full life. So when you're hearing that story in the movie, you kind of get the vibe like, okay, I think this is going to be important later. And it does become important later. It becomes like one of the most beautiful scenes that I can recall it later in the film. And it just honestly took my breath away, that whole dynamic in this film.
Well, yeah, when she has that moment where she turns around and, and looks at her, and then it's like Marianne was having this vision of this moment throughout the film, of seeing Eloise and then her pretty much evaporating, and then you see this actually happen, and it mimics that story. That reading is just a beautiful interplay between, because there's so many moments where these two characters are talking to one another, but really saying something else. Kind of like, there's a double meaning in most of what they say. And the thing that struck me that's just so beautiful is how this really represents the beginning of your love for somebody. If you've ever loved someone in the way that these characters love each other, your partner, your soulmate, whatever you want to call it. There's like this period where you're discovering each other. And then there's like this magical moment where you both realize that you love one another, and you're not really sure like what changed or what happened, but it's there. And that's what I love about the whole interplay of her also making the portrait at the same time, because a lot of it is shown. You see like the roughing of the portrait, like the outline, and then like these really like globs of paint, and you're like, that's going to be I don't paint, so like just seeing it's like, this is going to turn into a portrait. And then like the middle part of where it actually becomes the actual portrait is kind of not shown. It almost feels like, oh wow, she took this paint and she created this beautiful representation of this person. And it's kind of like magic if you don't understand it, or if you don't do it. And I feel like that's kind of like their love story as well. Like they know each other, and then there's this moment where they come to this realization that they are in love with one another. And what's so cool about this is that this movie kind of captures that and just encapsulate their whole relationship in this single moment. Because, I've been married for almost 10 years now. And both me and my wife, we often, relive the beginning of our romance, like, oh, remember when? And you think of those times, and they're like this enchanted time where you felt special about one another in a way that kind of fades and isn't the same. Of course, there's different elements to your relationship now. It's much deeper, but there's something about like that first spark of love, and like their relationship in this story, it like captures that. And then that's all they have. Like they don't have anything else. And it's such like a beautiful idea. And then when they talk about, at one point they're laying down and they talk about, they're talking about like their memories. And I think Eloise says, I don't want to regret. And then Marianne says, you should remember. And that's like so beautiful, because there's like almost like this sorrow when you look back at these beautiful memories, because you wish you could be there again. But then at the same time, you're just like remembering them and the joy that they brought you by just like, there's like this bittersweet, it's bittersweet to remember these because they're so special, but you also wish at the same time that you were still there.
Danny, what was it like seeing this movie with your wife at the same time?
It's funny. I found myself throughout it thinking, God, I hope she loves this as much as I am right now. Because we went to the Enzian here in Winter Park, Orlando, and the way the theater's set up, it's like tables and chairs, and you have to like turn to see the theater. It's like real hipstery indie vibe. So Casey and I were on like a bench row and sitting, and I felt myself like leaning forward at moments and like really into this movie. And then I'm like, man, does she love this as much as I love this right now? I'm really, really hoping so. And she did. I mean, I don't know if she's not a 5-star like me, but it was great to watch this with her. I think we were both pretty hyped about this movie. And back to what Proto was saying, I think for me, the pivotal moment of this movie, when you see them realize their love for each other, is the crazy bonfire scene.
Yes.
when they're literally standing apart from each other with the fire burning in between them. I mean, that's the literal fire that's like shown to us, but also they are realizing it. And it's incredibly beautiful moment. And you see the looks on their faces, and that's when the movie pivots to this full romance that they're about to embark on. And I love that scene so much. And the chanting of the women was magical. And it was what I thought of almost instantly. I was like, is this a clip from 2001 Space Odyssey? Because there's a scene where they're doing that exact, the monotone kind of like humming coming into it when the astronauts are walking down to the monolith in 2001. And it's the same kind of thing. It's like this one object in between them, this powerful, like all these women coming together, making this beautiful harmony. And then it's like, this is it. This is the moment when they find love with each other. And it was just such an impactful scene.
Man, that scene was something else, and I think that's what one thing I really enjoyed about this movie is like there aren't very like veiled metaphors. Like everything's very literal in this movie. Like even in the writing, you could like get lost in the writing. It's just very literal when they speak about. There's nothing like cutting very deep, like the subtext, just very in your face. Like she's literally on fire. Like you understand what's happening in this moment, and I appreciate that. Like I appreciate that everything is very in your face. That it's like it knocks you on the head about the emotion that is being conveyed between the two of them. And early on, when Eloise says she like had never heard of like an orchestra play before, and then Marianne starts playing the piano for her, and she sits down with her. Man, what a powerful scene that was! Oh, yeah. And you can see Eloise. Again, another thing with like breathing is very important in this movie. Like you can see her kind of like get excited and experience something while she's playing this like short piece on the piano that has been under wraps for months and months. And you just like experience it with her, like feeling that kind of music for the first time, and have a woman play it for her. Like she was like really feeling something special, which is amazing to see on screen.
Yeah, and the way that I think there's only 3 musical pieces in this. It's that where she sits down at the piano, and then the a cappella of the women at the bonfire, and then the orchestra at the end. And because it's just limited to those, it's like the silence says so much at the other parts. Like you're saying, you can hear the breathing, and then when the music hits in those moments, it's just so impactful.
Yeah, and I had put down that the absence of like a score in this movie it makes it so that the music doesn't manipulate your emotions. So it forces the powerful performances to be the emotion for you. And I feel like that was such a not insane, just like a amazing creative choice, because nothing was dictated by the music in this movie besides these 3 big impactful moments. So you have to, the emotions that you get are from what the 2 actresses, even the maid, I mean, she's great in this movie too, but the main 2 actresses do such a powerful performance. You don't need the score, which is wild to think about.
You have to have like amazing performances from the 2 actresses, Adele and Noemi, I think is how you pronounce her first name. And Adele is Eloise, and the mesmerizing performance she puts on in this movie, it just blew me away. Like, and she can convey, like Proto said, so much emotion and just kind of like the fragility of her facial mannerisms, like that I've never seen before in a film. And there was 2 like really big scenes When she finally finishes her first attempt at the painting and they review it together, after she kind of reveals to her that, like, I'm actually not just here to walk with you on the beach to make sure you don't kill yourself like your sister, which is, I think, a plot point we haven't even mentioned yet, but like, I'm here to paint you. And I was initially expecting Eloise to kind of like freak out, but she's like, oh, this is why you've been looking. This is why you've been looking at me the way you have been. So she thinks it's all been a lie. And she's kind of upset that this means she's going to leave because the painting's done. And her first painting, Eloise kind of dresses her down and says that, like, you know, the painting, is this how you see me? Like, there's nothing here. There's no life to it. And they have this amazing back and forth that I was able to find online where Marianne says, like, your presence is made up of fleeting moments that lack truth. And this might actually be the second painting. Eloise says, not everything is fleeting. Some feelings are deep. And they have this like really cutting conversation there. And God, just the way she was acting in that scene with her, like her literal mouth, and like how she contorted herself to kind of show real human emotion.
Is that the scene where they start describing each other when she finally sits for her?
Oh God. Are you kidding me?
That scene, that's literally the piece of art I'm working on right now. That scene was amazing. The way, like, she's like, the way your eyebrows raise or all this, and she starts making her look back at the mirror, and it's so good. It's so well acted. Both women in that are fantastic.
Are you talking about the how do you amuse your models scene? Or like, that might be the same one. She's sitting her for the first official time.
The first time, yeah.
And they're having this amazing interplay where Eloise asks Marianne, the painter, like, how do you amuse your models? What do you talk to them about? And she starts like giving her compliments. Yeah. So this is a way for her to like speak freely almost. And she tells her, like, your complexion, she starts off with saying, like, your complexion is amazing today. Your posture is amazing. And then she finally just tells her and looks her in the eye, like, you're very pretty. And Eloise's reaction to that is so perfect. Oh my God. She's posing and then she starts to smile. This is like one of the few times she smiles in the movie. And you can almost like see like a tear welling up that she was able to experience Marianne calling her pretty. And oh my God, what a beautiful scene that was.
Yeah, I love that scene because they're still not lovers yet. And then there's a scene later where they are, and they're painting again. And then just the way they're communicating, like it's almost like you can see like this chord between them of just them in love with one another. And like the looks that they're giving each other are so much different because there's like this acceptance and knowing between them now that wasn't there before.
Mm-hmm. So after the fire scene, it looks like the next morning where they finally kiss for the first time, where they pulled down the like convent facial coverings.
Oh, those veils.
Yeah, the veils. And they meet back up at the house because they're kind of like, Eloise is kind of scared of what that means, like that they finally kissed. And this is some of the writing that I had to like capture down after I left with Proto that I've seen quoted in almost like every Letterboxd review, where they're talking about how Eloise is like, do all lovers feel they're inventing something? Oh. And what a freaking line in this movie. Like, I think I was like in the theater at first, I was like, are you effing kidding me with this line? And not only that, but she's talking about like, I've imagined this moment and the motions. And Marianne is like, you've dreamt of me? And Eloise says, no, I've thought of you. And I was just like, this is unreal, so dude. Good. Oh my God.
Melted in that moment.
Man, like, and it did win, I think, several screenplay awards, and well-deserved. Unbelievable writing in those scenes.
A scene that I loved, and it gripped me, is the abortion scene, where the maid goes and she goes to like this old, I guess, like midwife, and then she's like doing the procedure, and while she's laying there, there's this infant on the bed as well. It's probably like less than 1 year old. And right now I have a son, and he's like the same age. And the baby noises that this baby makes is like the same noises that my son makes right now. I mean, just that whole scene of what's going on, and like she's laying there, like holding this baby's hand. It's just powerful. Like, And I think this movie has a lot to say just about women and their roles and their role in history and different, at different times in society. And I am far from qualified to, I feel like, comment on that, but it's there, and there's a lot of beautiful moments like that. And then when they go, and I love how Eloise, she like insists that they recreate that scene in a portrait, because it's like a scene, because there's as they're going through this movie, they're having these moments where Eloise is asking her about her profession of being a painter and just like what she's allowed to do as a woman and what she's not allowed to do. And I just think that this is probably not something that was painted, at the time, of like having 3 women do this scene. At least that's what I kind of took from it. So that just like them being able to recreate this and say like, no, let's remember this. Let's turn it into a portrait so that we have it forever, this moment in your life. I thought that was beautiful.
Another beautiful line is when they're working on the painting together, almost they're kind of having fun with the paint. And Eloise asks, how do we know it's finished? And Marianne says, at one point we stop. Like, that's another one of the lines I was talking about. Like, that's an amazing line, but that's not veiled at all. That has like quadruple meanings in this movie. And it just hits just right away. Like I just like got slapped in the face by those moments.
Are we going to talk about the armpit scene?
Yes. Bring us to the armpit scene.
That was when I sat back in my chair.
Yeah.
From leaning forward.
I wasn't expecting a drug scene like that through the pores of your pits.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Neither did I. There's a shot where Marianne's hand is performing a motion in between 2 parts of a human body. And as they zoom out, it's revealed to be Eloise's armpit. And I think they're like using pot. She's like, she put pot on her hand and then is like having it absorbed through her armpit as well, right?
You got me. I don't know. It was like sticky pot.
I didn't know if it was pot or if it's like supposed to be like a mushroom or something.
Peyote of some kind.
Yeah.
But I also like, this kicked me off. I said this that night after we watched it. I went Googling because I felt like this kind of love making was a thing, in the 18th century and around that time frame, because there's probably there's probably so many like taboo things for human beings to do around this era that they had to come up with certain other things. So I actually have had this tab open on my browser for longer than I care to admit. And there's actually a name. It's called intercrural sex, which is actually separate. This is apparently how 2 men had sex back then. It involves some oil and some thighs. You can use your imagination. And so it like, because I guess the other way was frowned upon. So then, because it all started off, because I had a memory of Abraham Lincoln being theorized to have done this. So, needless to say, my Google search history, I didn't go incognito mode for this, unfortunately, but it has been written in some documentaries that Abraham Lincoln was a little bit of a gadabout with a roommate that he had. And so I started reading about his biography. This is totally separate. I don't even know why I got here, but it led to a role, like, there are quotes from Abraham Lincoln about how he described one of his roommates that of the era led people to think that he was bisexual. And one of the quotes I just thought I was tickled by, not to say tickled, the same segment of intercrural sex, but he spoke of his roommate as saying he had a streak of lavender and spots soft as May violets. And apparently when you said in the early 20th century that a man had a streak of lavender, that meant that he was effeminate. So there's like a bunch of quotes like that Lincoln had given that people were led to think that. Oh, and also his roommate said something about Lincoln's thighs, and that when you complimented a man's thighs, that was something like that. So anyway, that's your history lesson.
You better not cut this.
For this episode. Did you say do not cut this or
do not cut this?
So after that scene with the 2 of them, there's still this big final moment, and actually there's several other scenes after this that are amazing, but they finally realize that their time is up. The mother returns, and they never have their goodbye at the, privately after the mother returns. Marianne has to say goodbye to Sophie. They hug, and then Marianne realizes, like, okay, maybe I should hug the mother, because she has to say goodbye to Eloise in front of the mother forever, presumably, and she doesn't really know how to do it. So she hugs the mother. The mother's like, okay, I'll take a hug. That's kind of weird. And the embrace between Eloise and Marianne in that moment, are you kidding me?
God.
Where they hug and they're like, their faces are touching each other. She smells her one last time, and then there's that quick cut. Oh my God, what a moment. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it hurt.
And then she runs down the stairs and she hears Eloise say, turn around. And she turns. The camera is locked on Marianne's face. Her head turns, and then you see Eloise in the gown, a la the fabled story with the husband and wife in Hades. And it happens there. Like the same story. Holy smokes.
Speaking of lines, there was one that made me laugh out loud, is when they're first reading the story of Orpheus, they're like, and then they start debating about it, and then Marianne says, read it again. And I just started cracking up, because we say that to each other all the time about stuff. Just read it again if you missed it.
So years later, I'm not sure what the time frame is, but Marianne is at a gallery showing off one of her works of the story that we referenced, Orpheus and Eurydice, and she submitted under her father's name, but actually she painted it. And as she's going through the pamphlet, she realizes that there's something happening at this gallery. She rushes over to another painting, and it's Eloise. Someone had done a portrait of Eloise, and also in the portrait is a young child that Eloise has had in their time apart in the years since their encounter. What a crushing scene. Just at that point right there.
And that scene, she also has that book page turned to page 28, which is where she had her self-portrait that she did for her earlier in the film, in that painting, which is...
Yeah, I was lost in it at that moment.
Oh my God.
I mean, can you imagine? So she's looking at the kid, and it's that page is in frame, I think, at the same time. And only when she starts, her eyes go down, she can see in the painting, her booklet is open to page 28, where she had that drawing of Marianne to remember her by. God, amazing. So she's like giving her a message through that portrait. Just amazing. Lovely stuff.
Yeah, and that last scene, when after Marianne's recounting the last time she saw Eloise, and then at the concert, and God, they're just sitting across the galleries at each other, and that Vivaldi score just kicks in, and it's that slow pan to Eloise's face, and you just see her, like, she experienced the joy of hearing that song again, and then she just melts into, like, what could only look like this tearful regret, maybe, of what her life was and what it could have been, but what it really couldn't have been. I mean, there was no way they could have been together. And it's just that loud Vivaldi, the orchestral music playing, and it's just hanging on her face for this uncomfortable amount of time. And you just really feel it, like this, like, what is she thinking? And then it just cuts to silence, and the movie's done. And that was so jarring. And that final scene in that movie was amazing.
She's recounting this story, I think, to a student. So the movie starts with her. So one of her students brought out her painting. The painting is called The Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So she's like recounting the story almost. And she says, after she sees the portrait, she's like, I did see her once after that time. And then she's sitting down to the orchestra, and her last line of the movie is, but she didn't see me. And she's sitting watching Eloise absorb the orchestra, and her gaze never turns to Marianne the entire time. She just takes in the orchestra, almost a mirror scene from the piano early in the movie.
Right.
And just the whole time, I'm just thinking of like the memory conversation they had, the Orpheus story, like how she's, she turned to look because she asked her to, so they can never see each other again. And just what they had is it. Like that few days they had together, there could be nothing more. And man, just really crazy stuff at the end of this movie.
I wanted her to look so bad. I wanted her to look over her shoulder and see her one last time. God, it was so painful.
So yeah, the movie ends, credits roll after this 3-minute shot literally of Eloise experiencing orchestra music, that piece. Proto, what do you think about this movie now, having some time removed?
Man, now that we're talking about it, I'm having second thoughts about how many stars to give it.
You don't have to give it stars yet. You don't have to do it yet.
I don't?
I want to hear it right now. He has to.
Oh my.
What were you at after the movie, and what are you at right now?
I was at NA after the movie. I say right now I'm at 4 stars. 4-star movie.
Wow.
Here's the thing. I know a lot of people. This is a movie for everybody. This is a slow movie. It can be boring to some, and it's not something that everyone's going to enjoy. To me, this movie is a masterpiece. I love this. I love the characters. I think Céline Sciamma deserved a Best Director nod. I think it was a mistake that this wasn't submitted. I don't know what they submitted instead. I think, is it Neon was Parasite as well?
Yeah, they were the distributor for Parasite.
So they could only submit one of the foreign films, and I guess of theirs. So anyway, best performances by these women. They were amazing. To me, this is a 5-star movie. I want to watch it often. My scenes are the scenes of her doing the art. When it shows her palette of color, it's like I live my life in palettes of color. And so this movie was every scene. It felt like a new swatch of art, and it was. I just needed this film in my life. I feel like I have rarely seen anything this good for me, color-wise, artistically. It just spoke to me on multiple levels. So I was definitely grateful I got to see this in a theater. And yeah, it's 5 stars for me.
Yeah, after we first saw it at the Ritz that first time, I actually wasn't even sure how to feel, because the scenes with the writing were so powerful, and I just wasn't ready to say how I felt about the scenes that are just conversations. Like I wasn't ready to. I still needed to sleep on it. But the writing is so powerful to me, and the emotion that was conveyed in the manner it was done was 5 stars for me.
Oh
yeah, I just loved it. It just takes a certain amount of creative skill for everyone involved in this movie that just makes me love it. Just love it. Unbelievable.
I love you guys.
I love you guys too.
Wow.
Should we read Catcher's letter right away, since we're still hot and heavy in this?
Let's get into it. Let's read it.
Catcher, previous letter writer. We saw on IG. We follow each other. We're dear friends. We follow him on IG. He was at TIFF, if I'm correct, seeing Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So he wrote a letter. I'm going to read it right now. I'm racing against the clock to finish this email. To sum up all the feelings this movie has filled me with would take ages. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a film that wastes nothing. Everything is in service to its themes and message. Every moment, every shot, every character is there to help place you in the point of view of someone that experiences so much of their life unspoken. As much as I'd love to talk about the script, the cinematography, or the acting, I don't have time. I'm about to walk into Ginger Snaps. Instead, I want to talk about the music. There is almost no music in this film, but when it arrives, it carries with it a powerful energy. In particular, there is a moment midway through the film that truly sums up the entire film for me. In the darkness of night, dozens of women stand around a fire with only each other as company. Suddenly, a small hum breaks out through the silence, its pitch slowly rising. As it does, one hum becomes 2, and then quickly it becomes a choral of harmonizing voices. The clapping begins, finally singing. First a few voices, and then a few more, and then it's all the voices. Each one of these women contributing a small piece to the larger whole. The moment around the campfire, like the several days Marianne and Eloise have together, is a chance for these women to be who they are, to embrace themselves fully, without restraint. End letter.
Thank you, Catcher.
Thank you, Catcher.
70mmpod@gmail.com. We got a voicemail line, hot and heavy, 267-409-6983. If you want to leave us a voicemail, if you want to give us an audio file, you can do that as well to 70mmpod@gmail.com.
What's up, traders? I just listened to this 70MN podcast about, I believe the episode title was I Hate Donnie Yen. I've never felt such a sense of utter betrayal as we just pick apart Donnie Yen's performance and perhaps the greatest Star Wars film of our generation. Donnie Yen has a pedigree. I don't know if you guys know. 2000's Highlander 4. You heard of it? How about 2003 Owen Wilson vehicle/sequel Shanghai Night? Have you heard of it? How about a more recent title, Triple X, The Return of Xander Cage? I can barely contain my Xander rage. It's okay. You guys are allowed to be wrong. Part of life is realizing that no one's perfect, except for possibly Donnie Yen. He can do whatever he wants on screen. And, I don't know. Love you, Danny.
Love you, Jonesy.
Jonesy was not happy with our Donnie Yen. Probably my Donnie Yen comments.
I'm glad he signed off
week.
of that because I thought he was looping me into this nonsense.
I'll be honest, when I was watching Rogue One for the first time, I didn't know who Donnie Yen was. And, Jonesy, I feel like for your sake, I should watch Ip Man and try to see it through your eyes. Can I redeem myself?
Anyone can be redeemed.
There's always room for redemption.
Listen to our Rogue One episode to see and listen to our Donnie Yen comments. All three of us. It wasn't just one person that had something to say. Maybe it was. Maybe it was just me.
How's it going, 70 millimeter? This is Sean from beautiful snowy Colorado. Just wanted to say I loved this last week's episode with Silence of the Lambs. Totally awesome review, and hearing you guys talk about the different aspects of the movie. I had to go back and rewatch it again after hearing you guys talk about it. I know you guys had posed a question to everyone about the most upcoming movie that we're interested in, and I am most interested in Death on the Nile. Now, it's supposed to be a continuation of the Murder on the Orient Express remake that just came out, I think, last year. And I absolutely loved that movie, and I loved the way the story went through with it, and the gentleman detective type story, which is pretty awesome. Another one I really liked that came out this year was called Knives Out. But yeah, I saw the not preview, but I saw that they're making a sequel to Murder on the Orient Express, and I am most excited about that movie. Can't wait to listen to you guys talk about Rogue One. Can't wait to hear Danny, nerd out on Star Wars, just like the rest of us do. Little tidbit, actually just got my girlfriend, through chronological order of the Star Wars movies. We are up to Rogue One. We just finished Rogue One. Next for her is the original trilogy, and then we'll be going through. And we've even done Clone Wars, the entire series.
Oh my God.
Jeez.
So we're going through everything. She was originally a Trekkie. She still loves Star Trek. But she's slowly coming over to the light and dark side of the Force. Anyways, guys, I'm going to end this for you. Again, totally awesome. I love the podcast. It's something I look forward to every week that my girlfriend and I like to listen to together.
Wow.
You guys are doing a great thing. Again, can't wait to hear you guys talk about Rogue One. And Danny, thanks a lot for making the child lithograph. Mine came in the mail yesterday. Opened it up immediately. It is fantastic. All right, gentlemen, have a good one.
Do you believe in the paranormal?
What are the chances?
How did he know I was going to bring that up?
This is disgusting, first of all. Also, how do we get, thanks for the call first, Sean. How do we get Sean to leave us voicemails before Thursday, before we record? So that he's now in line with the episode before. But what are the chances? Orient Express, I haven't heard that phrase uttered in the last 10 years, and now I hear it twice in one night.
Unbelievable.
That's unreal. Now I'm really excited. Holy cow.
Sean, I'm also going through the Star Wars saga with my wife. So I think about 10 years ago, we watched 15 minutes of A New Hope.
Oh,
and we're still there. So I'll
this
get back.
This is Her Majesty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I've heard a ton of people say that everyone says they love New Hope, but they don't really love New Hope.
Should we talk about New Hope right now?
They don't really love New Hope.
Don't you even.
You know,
God.
anytime you see someone say, I love New Hope, you know what they're saying. You get it. You know?
They're talking about New Hope 1976.
Yeah. I can't with you.
I hear a lot of people say that. I'm just sharing what I hear online, what people share their opinions about. Worth sharing.
Subreddits.
Next one.
Hello, 70mm. This is Neil calling. Last time I called in was the Horse Girl episode. I left that voicemail by saying I look forward to calling in next week. It's now several weeks later, and I haven't called back in, thus identifying me as the leading liar of the 70mm fan base. Didn't want to leave it too much longer. Just going to quickly sum up my thoughts on the last couple of movies you've seen in a quick noise for efficiency's sake. Silence of the Lambs. Rogue One. I believe this week you're covering Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I'm very much looking forward to that movie. I haven't had the chance to see it yet myself, but I understand it's about painting, snogging, and France, and those are three things I'm very keen on, so it does definitely sound like my kind of film. So I'm looking forward to watching it, and I'm even more looking forward to the greater depths of appreciation that I will have for it after hearing three such great reviewers cover it on this podcast. So I hope this message finds you well, and I look forward to hearing this episode.
Thank you, Neil.
Neil.
Thank you, Neil.
Unbelievable. Neil, very famous in the local wrestling scene over there across the sea, wherever that is. I couldn't even point it out on a map, but I'm sure it's gorgeous.
I think you go east.
We'll have to get show producer Dale to confirm that, maybe for the show notes. What a show, huh?
It was a beautiful show.
Can you imagine people listening to the pod hearing that THX chanting coming in there?
Just play the THX if we can't get the actual thing.
That would be
definitely
hilarious.
get some Vivaldi.
Oh yeah, we could probably do that. How funny would it be if I just did the THX audio and just hoped nobody noticed?
Just
Oh my
imagine.
god! Next week, big show, All or Nothing. I actually looked on Letterboxd, one of the features of Letterboxd Pro and above. You can see where these movies are streaming or available for purchase. There's actually a free service. Let me see if I had it up here. But it lets you watch the movie with ads. It's called Pluto TV. So you can just put it up in your browser. Thanks everyone for sharing the show. Really appreciate it. We're super stoked at the response so far. Check out our merch. If you're a graphic t-shirt kind of guy, which I know two of the hosts are, I'm not going to single out any names.
It was me.
No, I don't think Proto has ever worn a graphic tee, but maybe we can come up with some kind of merch that Proto finds acceptable. Maybe some kind of vegan 70mm loafers or slippers.
Yes.
Some knits going on. Some poly blends.
Can you imagine Proto wearing that kind of gildan thick tee? No. Oh my God.
I shudder at the thought.
He'd be so mad.
All right, we'll see everybody next week with our dear friend Chuck. Thanks for listening. See everybody then. $70mm is produced by Dale_A and sponsored by Half Double Design. Original artwork provided by Danny Haas. Spiritual guidance provided by Proto. This episode was mixed and edited by myself, Slim. Special thanks to the good people at Letterboxd for a chance to win a pro Letterboxd account. Share the new episode post every Monday on Twitter or Instagram. Connect with us on social media under @70mmPod and follow along using the links in our show notes. Goodbye.